The January wind howled through the streets of Seattle, carrying with it the sharp sting of winter's chill. Thomas Caldwell, a celebrated software engineer and the founder of a successful tech startup, stood at the corner of Pike Street and 4th Avenue. His Tesla, once a symbol of his carefully constructed life, now sat lifeless on the curb. The electric hum of progress had sputtered into silence, leaving him stranded in a way he hadn't felt in years. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell," his assistant muttered over the phone. "The tow truck is delayed and the meeting—" "Schedule it," Thomas interrupted, glancing at his watch. It was already 8:50 a.m., and he knew the window to salvage the day was closing. "I'll figure something out." His eyes scanned the street, landing on a nearby bus stop, where a small shelter stood amidst the bustling city. Public transportation felt foreign to Thomas, almost like stepping into a world he had left behind long ago. The last time he'd set foot on a bus was likely during college, a time when his ambitions had yet to outpace his wallet. Yet, with no cabs in sight, he stuffed his hands into the pockets of his wool coat and trudged toward the small shelter. The stop was nearly empty except for a woman and a young boy. The woman's honey-colored hair caught his attention first, tumbling down her back in soft waves that seemed oddly familiar. Then she turned slightly, and his breath hitched. "What?" "Emily." It had been 5 years since Thomas had last seen her. The end of their relationship was still a scar he avoided touching, a whirlwind of late-night arguments and missed dinners, culminating in a goodbye he hadn't expected. She looked almost the same, though there was a new weight to her expression, a gravity he couldn't place. Then his eyes fell on the boy standing beside her, clutching her hand. The child couldn't have been more than 4 years old, with sandy brown hair and piercing green eyes that mirrored Thomas's own. "Emily?" The name slipped from his lips before he could stop it. She turned fully, her face registering surprise and something else. Fear. "Dabis." The boy tugged at her hand, curious but shy, as Thomas struggled to process what he was seeing. His mind raced, questions piling up faster than he could manage. "Is he?" Thomas began, his voice unsteady. Emily's hand tightened around the boy's small fingers. Her voice clipped and hurried. "It's been a long time, Thomas. We really have to go." Before Thomas could respond, the bus screeched to a halt in front of them. Emily ushered the boy on board, her movements hurried. As the bus pulled away, the boy turned and looked out the window, his green eyes locking onto Thomas's. And in that fleeting moment, Thomas knew his life was about to change forever. Thomas stood frozen at the bus stop long after it had disappeared down the street. The boy's green eyes haunted him, reflecting questions he didn't yet know how to ask. His mind raced back 5 years, unearthing memories he had worked tirelessly to bury. Emily had been the one constant in his life when everything else was chaotic. They had met during a startup conference in Portland, her sharp wit and easy laugh cutting through the sea of overly ambitious tech enthusiasts. While Thomas focused on his fledgling company, Emily had been his grounding force, reminding him to look up from his computer screen and experience the world. But even she couldn't compete with his ambitions. As Caldwell Innovations grew, so did Thomas's obsession with its success. Late nights at the office turned into early mornings, and weekends became just another workday. Emily had tried to adapt, but the cracks in their relationship grew deeper with each passing day. "I don't want to feel like I'm competing with your company," she had told him one night, her voice trembling with frustration. "I want to be part of your life, not a footnote." "You are my life," Thomas had replied, though his words felt hollow even to himself. The breaking point came after Thomas closed his first major funding round. They had planned a celebratory dinner, but a last-minute investor call kept him at the office. Emily had waited at the restaurant for nearly an hour before walking out, her patience finally spent. When he returned home that night, she was gone. At first, Thomas thought it was just another argument, one they would patch up like they always did. But days turned into weeks, and Emily never came back. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and mutual friends offered little help, claiming she needed space. What Thomas didn't know then was how deeply Margaret Caldwell, his mother, had played a role in their separation. Margaret had always been protective of her only son. As the widow of a corporate titan, she saw Thomas's relationship with Emily as a distraction from his true purpose, continuing the Caldwell legacy. Margaret's disapproval had been subtle at first. A raised eyebrow during family dinners, backhanded compliments about Emily's simple upbringing. But when Emily confided in her about her pregnancy, Margaret saw an opportunity. "You have to think about what's best for Thomas," Margaret had said, handing Emily a prenuptial agreement that detailed strict clauses about inheritance rights. "A child born out of wedlock could complicate things. It's better if you move on now before this becomes a bigger problem." Emily had been devastated. She knew Margaret's words weren't just idle threats. Thomas's silence during their final weeks together had confirmed her worst fears. He wouldn't stand up to his mother. And so, Emily made the hardest decision of her life. She left. In the years that followed, Thomas threw himself into his work, using the success of his company to drown out the emptiness Emily's absence left behind. Caldwell Innovations became a household name in the tech industry, and Thomas was hailed as a visionary. But behind the accolades and the wealth, he was lonely. His sprawling penthouse felt more like a museum than a home, and the rare moments of silence were filled with what-ifs. What if he had fought harder for Emily? What if he had put her before his work? What if he had listened? He had tried to move on, dating briefly but never seriously. No one measured up to Emily, and deep down, he knew they never would. The image of her standing at the bus stop with that little boy resurfaced in his mind, tugging at something he had tried to ignore for years. The boy's resemblance to him was undeniable. Could he be my son? The thought hit him like a freight train. If Emily had been pregnant when she left, that would explain everything: her sudden departure, her refusal to contact him, even her wary expression at the bus stop. Thomas clenched his fists, anger and regret boiling in his chest. If the boy was his, he had missed so much. His first words, his first steps, every milestone a father should have been there for. And if Margaret had known, the possibility chilled him to the bone. His mother had always been controlling. But could she have hidden something so monumental from him? Thomas pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts, pausing on Margaret's name. For a long moment, he debated calling her, demanding answers. But he knew Margaret wouldn't give them freely. No, he needed to start with Emily. She had vanished once before, but this time, Thomas wouldn't let her slip away. With a newfound resolve, he opened his browser and typed, "Private Investigator Seattle, Discreet Services." He had spent 5 years building an empire. Now, he would dedicate every resource he had to finding Emily and the truth about the boy with his eyes. It didn't take long for Thomas to track Emily down. The investigator he'd hired was efficient, providing a neatly compiled report within 48 hours. Emily was living in a modest neighborhood in West Seattle, working as a freelance graphic designer. The report included everything from her daily routine to a photo of her walking hand in hand with the boy, Liam. Thomas stared at the photo for what felt like hours. Liam's green eyes and sharp jawline mirrored his own so perfectly that there was no denying it. He was convinced now more than ever. Liam was his son, but convincing Emily would be another matter entirely. 3 days later, Thomas found himself at Alki Beach Park. According to the report, Emily often took Liam there in the late afternoons. He waited on a bench, his heart pounding as he scanned the area. When he finally saw them, his breath caught. Emily was sitting on a blanket under the shade of a tree, helping Liam build a sandcastle. The boy's laughter rang out across the park, light and carefree, and Thomas felt a pang of loss for the years he had missed. For a moment, he considered leaving. What if she refused to talk to him? What if she turned Liam against him? But then Liam looked up, spotting him, and his small face lit up with curiosity. There was no turning back now. "Emily," Thomas called, approaching cautiously. Emily's head snapped up, and her body tensed as if bracing for a blow. "Thomas," she said, her voice carefully neutral. She instinctively pulled Liam closer, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "Hi," Thomas said, his voice unsteady. He looked at Liam, who stared back at him with wide, curious eyes. "Hi, kiddo," Como said. "Who's this, Mommy?" Liam asked, tilting his head. Emily hesitated, then smiled tightly. "Just an old friend." Thomas felt the words like a slap, but chose to ignore them. "Can we talk, Emily? Please." Emily glanced at Liam, then sighed. "Liam, why don't you play on the swings for a bit? I'll watch you from here." The boy nodded, grabbing a plastic bucket and running off toward the playground. Thomas waited until Liam was out of earshot before turning back to Emily. "You've been following me," she accused, crossing her arms. "I needed answers," Thomas admitted. "You disappeared, Emily. I didn't know where you went or why. Then I saw you at the bus stop, and..." He swallowed hard. "Liam, is he my son?" Emily's expression hardened. "What does it matter, Thomas? You have your life, and we have ours." "It matters because I've missed 4 years of his life," Thomas said, his voice rising. "If he's my son, I deserve to know him. I deserve to be part of his life." Emily shook her head. "You can't just walk in and expect everything to be fine. Do you have any idea how hard it's been? Raising him on my own, knowing what your mother would do if she found out about him?" "My mother?" Thomas frowned. "What does she have to do with this?" Emily laughed bitterly. "Everything, Thomas. She showed me that prenuptial agreement and made it clear that Liam would never be accepted by your family. She said I was a distraction, that I was holding you back. And you? You were never there. Always working, always somewhere else." Thomas felt the weight of her words settle over him like a storm cloud. "Emily, I didn't know. If I had..." "But you didn't," she snapped. Her voice softened as she looked toward Liam, who was now gleefully sliding down the playground spiral slide. "I had to protect him, Thomas. I couldn't let him grow up feeling unwanted." Thomas stepped closer, lowering his voice. "He's not unwanted. He's my son, Emily. I can see it. I felt it the moment I saw him." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. "And what happens when you get bored? When your work becomes more important again? Liam doesn't deserve that." "I've changed," Thomas said firmly. "I'm not the man I was 5 years ago. Let me prove it to you. Let me prove it to him." Emily hesitated, her walls cracking ever so slightly. "This isn't just about you and me anymore, Thomas. Liam is my whole world. I won't let anyone hurt him, not even you." Thomas nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I don't want to hurt him, Emily. I just want to be his father." They stood in tense silence for a moment before Emily finally sighed. "Fine, you can see him, supervised for now. But if you hurt him, Thomas, you won't get another chance." "Won't," Thomas promised, his voice resolute. Emily called out to Liam, who came running back with a bucket full of sand and a beaming smile. "We're going home, sweetie," she said. Thomas knelt to Liam's level. "It was nice meeting you, Liam," he said, his voice catching. Liam tilted his head. "You'll be around again, right?" Thomas glanced at Emily, who gave a reluctant nod. "Yeah, buddy," he said, his heart swelling with hope. "I'll be around." Thomas left Alki Beach with a mix of hope and apprehension. Emily had given him a chance, but it came with conditions. Conditions he was determined not to break. As he drove back to his office, Liam's face remained vivid in his mind. Those green eyes weren't just a resemblance. They were a reflection of everything Thomas had lost. He spent that night poring over the investigator's report again, looking for gaps that Emily hadn't filled. It wasn't just about finding out where she had been for the past 5 years. He wanted to understand why she had felt the need to leave. And the answers pointed back to one person, Margaret Caldwell. 2 days later, Thomas found himself in his mother's penthouse, the space as meticulously maintained as its owner. Margaret greeted him with her usual composed demeanor, her eyes narrowing slightly at his unannounced visit. "Thomas," she said, motioning toward the impeccably arranged sitting area, "to what do I owe this surprise?" Thomas didn't waste time. "When were you going to tell me about Liam?" Margaret's expression didn't falter, but there was a flicker of something in her eye, something that confirmed his suspicions. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice smooth. "Don't lie to me, Mother." His tone was sharper than he intended, but the weight of 5 years of deception pressed against his chest. "I saw Emily. I saw Liam. He's my son, isn't he?" Margaret sighed, a practiced exhalation designed to convey both patience and exasperation. "Thomas, Emily made her choice. She walked away." "Because you drove her away," Thomas snapped. He stood, pacing the room. "I know about the prenuptial agreement. I know you showed it to her. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Margaret's mask cracked, just slightly. "I was protecting you," she said firmly. "You were on the brink of something extraordinary, Thomas. Caldwell Innovations needed you focused. Emily would have been a distraction." "She wasn't a distraction," Thomas said, his voice low but steady. "She was everything. And you took her away from me." "I gave her a choice," Margaret retorted, her tone defensive. "And she made the one that was best for everyone." Thomas stopped pacing, his hands clenching into fists. "No, Mother, you didn't give her a choice. You manipulated her. You used your power, your money, to make her feel like she wasn't good enough. Like Liam wasn't good enough. And now, because of you, I've missed 4 years of his life." Margaret stood as well, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "And what do you plan to do about it, Thomas? Throw everything away for some misplaced sense of guilt? Do you think Emily is waiting for you with open arms? She's moved on. So should you." Thomas stared at her, a surge of anger and resolve rising within him. "You lost the right to decide what's best for me years ago, and you never had the right to decide what's best for Liam." Margaret's face hardened. "You'll regret this, Thomas. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. The company will survive without me," he said, cutting her off. "But I won't survive losing them again." He turned and walked out, leaving Margaret standing alone in her pristine penthouse. The next day, Thomas met Emily and Liam at a local park. Emily had been cautious, but true to her word, she allowed Thomas supervise time with his son. Liam was shy at first, clinging to Emily as they sat on a picnic blanket. "Do you like superheroes, Liam?" Thomas asked, trying to engage him. Liam nodded, his eyes lighting up. "I like Spider-Man." Thomas grinned. "Spider-Man's awesome. Did you know I used to build stuff that's kind of like his web shooters?" "You did?" Liam's curiosity overcame his shyness and he inched closer. "Yeah," Thomas said, pulling out his phone to show him a prototype design he'd worked on years ago. Liam was enthralled, asking a flurry of questions. As the afternoon wore on, Thomas felt a connection forming. Liam's laughter, his fascination with technology, even the way he scrunched his nose when he was deep in thought. It was like looking at a younger version of himself. Emily watched from a distance, her protective stance softening as she saw Liam warming up to Thomas. By the time the sun began to set, Liam was tugging on Thomas's hand. "Can we do this again, Mr. Thomas?" Thomas knelt to Liam's level, his voice thick with emotion. "You can just call me Thomas. And yes, we can do this again." Emily approached, her expression unreadable. "He seems to like you," she said quietly. "I like him too," Thomas replied, glancing at Liam, who was now chasing bubbles with a group of other kids. "Emily, I want to be part of his life, not just on weekends or special occasions. I want to be there for him every day." Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Let's take it slow, for his sake." Thomas nodded, understanding that trust wasn't something he could demand. He would earn it, one step at a time. As they walked back to their cars, Liam holding both their hands, Thomas felt a flicker of hope. For the first time in years, it felt like the pieces of his life were falling into place. The next few weeks became a delicate dance of trust and rebuilding. Emily remained cautious, but Thomas took every opportunity to prove that he was committed, not just to Liam, but to the family they could become. Every Saturday, they met at a small community center near Emily's neighborhood. Liam loved the play area, and Thomas used these moments to connect with his son. At first, Liam had been shy, sticking close to Emily, but as the days passed, he grew more comfortable. One morning, Liam tugged on Thomas's sleeve as they sat by the building blocks. "Can you build a tower with me, Mr. Thomas?" Thomas smiled, kneeling beside him. "Of course, and you can just call me Thomas, buddy." Liam tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his green eyes. "Can I call you Dad?" Thomas froze for a moment, his heart racing. "Like what?" Liam shrugged. "Maybe. Dad?" The word hit Thomas like a tidal wave. He looked at Emily, who stood a few feet away, her eyes wide with surprise. She didn't say anything, but she didn't stop Liam either. Thomas swallowed the lump in his throat. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, Liam." "Okay, Dad," Liam said, grinning. Later that afternoon, as Emily and Thomas packed up the toys, she finally spoke. "He's starting to trust you." Thomas nodded. "It means everything to me." Emily hesitated. "I want to believe you, Thomas. But I've seen how work can take over your life. I can't let Liam get attached if you're going to disappear when things get busy." Thomas paused, setting down the toy he was holding. "I get it, Emily, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. But I've made changes. Caldwell Innovations doesn't own me anymore." "Really?" Emily raised an eyebrow. Thomas exhaled. "I've stepped back. I've trained a team to handle the day-to-day operations. The company's still mine, but it's not my life anymore." Emily studied him for a long moment. "That's a start." The turning point came one rainy evening when Emily called Tomas unexpectedly. "Liam's sick," she said, her voice anxious. "He has a fever, and I can't get it down." Thomas was already grabbing his keys. "I'll be right there." When he arrived, Emily looked frazzled, cradling a groggy Liam on the couch. "He's been like this since this afternoon," she said. Thomas knelt beside them, gently touching Liam's forehead. "We should take him to urgent care, just to be safe." Emily nodded, and they bundled Liam up together. At the clinic, Thomas stayed by Liam's side, distracting him with silly faces and stories while the doctor examined him. "It's just a viral infection," the doctor said eventually. "Keep him hydrated, and he should be better in a few days." Relief washed over both parents as they returned to Emily's apartment. Liam was already dozing off in Thomas's arms, his small head resting on his father's shoulder. Emily watched as Thomas carefully laid Liam down in his bed, pulling the blanket up to his chin. The tenderness in his movements brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly when they stepped out of Liam's room. "You don't have to thank me," Thomas replied. "This is what I want, to be here, to help, to be part of his life." Emily looked at him, her walls finally beginning to crumble. "It's not just about him, Thomas. It's about us too. Can I trust you not to hurt me again?" Thomas took her hands, his gaze steady. "I know I let you down before, Emily. I can't undo the past, but I can spend every day proving that I've changed. I don't just want to be Liam's dad. I want to be the partner you deserve." Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "I'm scared, Thomas." "I am too," he admitted. "But I think we owe it to ourselves and to Liam to try." From that night on, things began to shift. Thomas became a fixture in their lives, not just as a visitor, but as a partner. He picked Liam up from preschool, helped with bedtime routines, and even learned how to make Liam's favorite dinosaur-shaped pancakes. Emily started to relax, allowing herself to enjoy the moments of laughter and joy that Thomas brought back into their home. For the first time in years, she began to imagine a future where they could truly be a family. One Saturday morning, as they sat around the kitchen table, Liam looked up from his plate and asked, "Are we like other families now?" Thomas and Emily exchanged a glance, and Thomas reached over to ruffle Liam's hair. "We're better, buddy. We're our own kind of family." Emily smiled, the last of her doubts fading away. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm for Thomas, Emily, and Liam. Thomas became deeply involved in Liam's daily life: school drop-offs, bedtime stories, and weekend pancake mornings. Slowly, Emily's walls began to fall, and a sense of family took root. One crisp afternoon, as they walked through the park, Thomas stopped and turned to Emily. "I've been carrying this for 5 years," he said, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside was a diamond ring. "Emily Bennett, losing you was the greatest mistake of my life. Being given a second chance is more than I deserve, but I promise to never waste it. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Emily's eyes as she smiled. "Yes, Thomas." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed, the promise of forever hanging in the autumn air. When they returned home, Liam greeted them with wide eyes. "Why is Mom so happy?" Thomas knelt to his son's level. "Because she just said yes to being a family forever." "Really?" Liam exclaimed, clapping his hands. "So I can call you Dad all the time now?" "You bet, buddy," Thomas said, lifting him into a hug. As the sun set, they sat together on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new story, built on trust, love, and the joy of second chances.